Getting There and Giving Back by Aimee Stories. Today we are interviewing AJ Machado. Hey AJ, how are you?
I am doing super well, Aimee. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Okay, AJ, so where are you today? What are you working on?
I am kind of relaunching my career. I spent most of my adult life as a traditional radio show host, mostly in San Diego. And, that ended last year as part of the massive corporate downsizing. It was nothing personal. My show is actually doing really, really well, but I was committing the cardinal sin of still getting a decent paycheck, which is not allowed in radio anymore. So, um, my corporate radio job ended, and if that had happened 10 years ago, I would have scrambled to get another corporate radio job. But I've decided that that's not where the future of audio is, and I had a good time doing it for all those years, and I pivoted. So now I've launched a podcast. I first launched a streaming radio station, which evolved into a podcast, and I'm having a great time doing that.
So let me get this straight. You were the top performing radio show in San Diego, and they canceled your show. Do I have that right?
The month I was let go, I was number one in the ratings. Yeah.
Okay, that makes no sense. Was it a shock? What was your feeling when you got that information?
Well, there had been a management change, and that's always a little bit wonky. But I thought, well, with 20 years of heritage, and I have a big charity, a thing I do I thought my worst case scenario was I would just get a worse contract when my contract came up. I didn't think I was in danger with all of that heritage and ratings of.
Did you cry?
No, I didn't. No, I was shocked, but no, I didn't cry. I just started thinking of what I would do next.
And how long ago was that?
That was in January of 2020.
Okay, so not that long ago, just over a year. Okay, so how many years had you been working for that company?
For that company, only about 4 years. So I worked for most of the major companies at some point or another, all within.
And how long did it take you to jump back in and continue your career? Did you take any time off?
Well, the first idea I had was a little ambitious, which was launching an online radio station. So it took a while to figure out how to do all that, how to legally play the music without pirating it. And I had to basically build a studio in my office. And it was about a 6-month process. So it took a while. And long story short with that was it was more trouble than it seemed to be worth. I really thought, because everyone tells you should do a podcast. I'm like, man, I'm not going to I'm going to do something bigger than that. I'm going to launch a radio station. And no one cared. Everyone still thought it was, hey, how's your podcast going? I'm like, all right, I just need to do a podcast.
So why do you do the work you do? Did you know at a young age that you were going to be in radio?
No, I always liked connecting with people through entertaining them. And I had kind of done everything but radio, right? I actually was one of those kids that was in drama club and in band and every kind of performing thing. And I actually started doing stand-up comedy professionally when I was 15 years old. I don't know if you remember the club Friday Night Live. They would try to keep kids from drinking and driving and doing drugs. And one of the things they did, which was kind of cool in the county that I grew up in, is they took over a comedy club once a month, and then they had teen comedy nights. And so I started doing the teen comedy nights, and they always had one professional comedian actually host. So at least someone didn't suck. And one of the professional comedians was like, hey, come open for me this weekend. And I did. And then started opening for her more often. And by the time I graduated high school, I was a full-time comedian.
So you can do you still do stand-up?
No, I did it for many years, even after I got into radio, but I stopped when I came to San Diego. But the way that translated to radio was after just I thought I had found my thing, man, because I really loved writing and performing stand-up. But I quickly hated the lifestyle. I hated all the traveling. I hated the perpetually looking for work, right? Because you book work usually a day at a time, sometimes a whole week at a time. You sitting around a hotel room all day waiting for night to go to work. I just realized, this isn't as great as I thought it was going to be. And now what do I do? And
you were an actual stand-up comedian professionally after college?
After high school.
After high school. Did you go to college?
I did some, but I couldn't. I was already doing comedy. But so when I had that moment of, I thought I wanted to do this. Now what else am I going to do? In doing comedy, I would often go on to the local radio station in the town I was in to be interviewed and hopefully sell some tickets. And so I was like, you know what, those guys in those radio stations, that they don't have to travel. they don't have to do real work. It's kind of the best of both worlds. So I made that pivot and said I set out to do a
Okay,
radio.
so let's talk about that. Do real work. Do you have to prepare for your radio morning show?
Oh yeah, but I like it, so it's not.
How do you prepare?
You kind of go over your life. What happened today that might be relatable or funny, and that happens over the years. That becomes something that you do in real time. The second something happens, you go, "Oh, that's material for tomorrow." But then you look at what's going on in the world and what people are talking about. It's harder right now, right? With so much of the kind of fun fluff that made up pop culture is just buried in the pandemic and the politics, and that was one challenge.
How do you think the morning show game and the media game and the podcast game has changed over the last couple of years? And do you think that we'll see anything radically different in the future? Like, do you think pop culture is going to remain the top topic, or will it be changing?
The kind of content depends on the format of whatever you're listening to. I think terrestrial radio, it's pretty clear where it's going, which is mostly to be very, very generic, right? It's going to be mostly music. They don't want to pay personalities. They don't want to pay to do promotions. So there's not going to be much difference between what you listen to on Spotify and your local radio stations, other than you're going to have to listen to a ton of commercials on the radio. And I don't think the people at the top of those companies think that's a winning plan. I just think that they're making their money now and they'll be gone by the time radios are relevant, So, but the great news is if radio doesn't need talent anymore, guess what? Talent doesn't need radio anymore, because there are all these platforms, whether it's a podcast or a YouTube station, to use all those same tools. And the tools that are out there are getting better every day.
Is radio seeing a decline in listenership, or is it staying consistent, over the last 5 years?
Radio's always stayed pretty consistent, and radio executives love to tell you that. We're still listened to, we're still relevant. And this isn't a bitter ex-radio guy saying this. I said this my whole career. Every meeting thing that came after radio was supposed to kill radio, right? Movies were going to kill radio, then TV was going to kill radio, then the iPod was going to kill radio, and then satellite, and nothing kills radio. And it's not because radio is good; it's because radio is passively used. You don't even.
But is it used anywhere other than in the car?
Mostly it's used in the car. And you
Okay.
got where I was going. Most people just get in their car and they have the same 5 preset stations they've done for 100 years, and it's the noise in the background. And so if you want to, talk about how relevant you are because people are too lazy to plug in their aux cord for now, that's fine. But it's not, so people are listening to it, but not passionately.
Okay, so you were a corporate radio guy who used to do stand-up comedy. By all accounts, you had a dream job, right? I mean, you were like sort of idolized?
I was very lucky to do what I got to do.
And so right now you have been given an opportunity to take your talents and lead your own enterprise.
Yes. Which is great, because when you talk about the change of radio, I mean, one of the things that changed is they don't want you to do much. Even when I was, still my key card was working, it was, just talk, 4 times an hour, try to keep it to 2 to 3 minutes. I mean, they want you to do so little, and it works for them because, that's the way things are going. So for the first time in years, I'm able to do something I'm actually excited about and creatively.
I mean, you were the main guy. I mean, I listened to you every morning driving to my job from Pacific Beach to Carlsbad, and I mean, you were like the top guy. What do you think has allowed you to get to that role, to have that big of a show at such a young age? What is your superpower? How did you get there?
Well, it's kind of you to say. So coming from a stand-up comedy background, when I started doing radio, I thought comedy was going to be my superpower, and I was going to write these comedy bits, and I was going to write funny parody songs and do all that cringy, horrible morning radio stuff. And I realized pretty quickly that no one ever came up to me at the station event and said, "Oh, that funny character you did is my favorite." It was always, "Oh my God, that story you were told about what happened with that date you had, that had me dying," or whatever. And I realized it was just really being really honest and sharing your life is what really connects with people. And that's always what I've really tried to do. When I kind of had one of those blessings in disguise when I first arrived in San Diego, like a month after I started my show. I was actually engaged to get married. And the woman I was engaged to dumped me. She called it off. And I was pretty devastated, but I went on the air and talked about it. And I mean, that audience was like, what? He's talking about this? And that
Wow.
whole saga, because we almost got back together and this and that first like soap opera, you think of radio shows as trying to make you laugh, but it's really connecting with you. And in radio, there were times when I'm pretty upfront about the fact I'm a pretty geeky guy and I like, comic books and, I'm not the coolest guy on the radio. And when you're on a top 40 station, I did have big consultants going, man, you got to be cooler. You can't talk about being a geek. And I'm like, look, first of all, that's what I really am. You can't fake it, right? Second of all, it makes you a normal human being. You got to be whatever you uniquely are.
So let's talk about your personal life a little bit, since that's how it sounds like you have been able to connect. So what are your values? What's your support system?
My values are, I'm going to give you the most generic answer in the world, but I hammer my two daughters with just treat people the way you want to be treated. I know it's the most generic advice in the world, but if we all just did that, that's a really great litmus test. So you're
saying people don't like to be treated like shit?
Yeah, I'm saying if you just ran every decision you made through that filter, you'd be a pretty noble human being. So that's what I try to do. And that's what I encourage my kids to do.
And how do you stay motivated?
I've always been lucky enough to do something I like to do. I mean, even now doing a podcast, it's been so much figuring it out, but that's part of the fun. And, I'm motivated by wanting tomorrow's show to be good, Yeah. And that's why I'm kind of more motivated now than I've been in a while, because I do feel like I'm putting out something good.
And so how do you measure your performance? Like, how do you know you're putting out something good? How do you gauge that?
I've always, this sounds weird, but just the way in my head, like as I'm doing it, I'm going, oh, this is going well, or oh, this is going a little too long, or like in real time, I'm kind of air checking myself. In fact, now that I have to edit my own podcast every day, it's the first time in a long time I've ever really listened to myself, because I would just always, by the end of the show, I would say, the 7 o'clock hour was good. The 8 o'clock hour sucked. We need to do more of this tomorrow.
How do you feel your work gives back to society, to the world? How do you find meaning in what you do in this life?
Well, that's kind of a cool side effect of being on the radio that I didn't think about, which is that when someone calls you up and says, hey, it's so-and-so from the blood bank and we're running low on blood, can we come on tomorrow and pump it up? Or can you come do a promotion? You're in a position to really be a part of the community in a really positive way. So to directly help people, I think is an amazing gift. And I used to, be real self-deprecating about like, I'm not curing any diseases over here. I'm just doing a morning show. But at the end of the day, man, if that makes someone's morning a little bit better, gives them a little bit of joy, I think that's a service. I'm happy I could do that for somebody. And then, over time, we, as far as literally giving back, we created the AJ's Kids Foundation, which is still going strong. And that was, it powers the fun stuff at the biggest children's hospital in San Diego.
What's one of your strongest memories of your career? Like work, like maybe someone you interviewed or a story you told? I mean, just the one about your fiance leaving you. What other stories resonate really deep with you that you've worked on?
I remember when I was, so before I came to San Diego, I was in a community, it's the Monterey Bay, which sounds very fancy, but most of the Monterey Bay is not very fancy. It's a very working class area. And I woke up one morning, I was getting my show ready, like usually, how do you get ready for a show? And there was a story in the paper about a mom of some kids who had been killed by a drunk driver. And I was like, man, that's brutal. And so I went on the air, I started talking about it. And I was like, you know what? It was in the article that the family didn't have any means at all, and this was going to devastate them. They had nothing financially. So I said, screw this. I'm just going to leave the studio. And I grabbed a little red wagon that we had in our promotions tent for some reason. I put a bucket in it, and I said, if you see me walking, come put some money in the bucket.
Wow.
And I did my show on my phone, essentially. So someone was back at the station doing the music, and every time the music stopped, it was me going, okay, I'm 10 miles down the street now. And by the time I got to the scene of that accident, this town where people didn't really have much had given $10,000 to this family.
That's incredible. I just got chills. Wow. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you have some major power. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, thank you. I've been lucky enough to have a lot of stories like that, but that was like kind of the first where I was kind of out the door before I even thought it through of how I was going to do it or anything. And like I said, I got into this to, avoid real work and do something I liked. But I was pleasantly surprised to find out how you could do stuff like that, which is a major side benefit. Yeah.
Do you feel like it's going to be harder to do that now with a podcast and more of a distributed type of channels?
Well, I still have a local audience, which is a unique thing for a podcast, right? In fact, my big fundraiser I did every year for the Children's Hospital, I would go up in a scissor lift. We call it AJ's Kids Crane, and I would live in this crane, and we would collect toys for Rady Children's Hospital. I did this every year. And in 2020, I called the hospital up. I said, get ready. I'm going to get my crane up in the air, and we're going to do it. And we were set. And unfortunately, the stay-at-home orders came right after that, and it just wasn't the place we're going to do it. Didn't feel good about doing it, calling people out there when they were told not to do it. So we still didn't take no for an answer. We just did it virtually. We just said, go online and make a donation. And, it was nowhere near what we'd get in a normal year, but we still made $6,000 in 3 days for the Children's Hospital. And that's nothing compared to what we usually do. But I think in 2021, we get back up in a crane. We do it the right way. And
So you're still very bullish on local events in person, that it's coming back and all that stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think sooner than later, knock on wood. So,
okay. Favorite food, favorite book. And, I guess, what do you listen to when you're not listening to your own show?
Okay. Favorite food, I would probably say, look, I lived in California my whole life. It's got to be Mexican food. Favorite book is actually a super hard one for me because I'm I read a lot, and I read a lot of different genres. Let's come back to that one. What do I listen to? Podcast wise, I love Conan O'Brien's podcast. Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. He's an amazing interviewer. There's a podcast called Smartless, which is Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and Sean Hayes. And one of them books the guest every week and surprises the other two. So the other two have no idea who they're going to interview.
That's fun.
It's a fun listen. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and musically, you'd be really surprised. I have weird old taste in music. I listen to a lot of old Motown and old soul music.
Oh yeah?
Sam Cooke and stuff like that.
You have a record player?
No, I stream it. I tell the smart speaker to play it. I use new technology to listen to old music.
Favorite book, AJ?
I don't know if I can pick a favorite. I know a book I've gone back and read several times since I first read it when I was in high school is The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman, which is an interesting, kind of incredible book. Yeah.
Do you remember your key takeaway from it?
I remember a kid was reading it next to me at school, and the subtitle is A Book That Changes Lives. And I was like,
The Way of the Peaceful Warrior.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Have you heard of it?
No, but it sounds like something that we all need to read.
It's about a college student who's walking home late at night, and he sees what appears to be a janitor jump from the ground to the roof of a gas station. And he goes to this janitor and he goes, what the hell did I just see? And that janitor ends up being kind of his Yoda, Mr. Miyagi character, and teaches him the ways of a good life. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. I'm going to check it out. Okay. Thank you so much.